Lions of the Southland, Sunday, November 5th, 2023. You'll notice that we already had an episode on Sunday, November 5th. That was our recap of the weekend in Georgia Tech sports, talking about football versus UVA and then volleyball versus Louisville. If you want to check that out, that is the last episode in your podcast feeds. Mr. Grant, tell us a little bit about that episode.
I recommend it. It's one of the best Georgia Tech sports weekends we've had in a hot minute. So please go relive that with us, because it was a comfortable ACC win and a historic volleyball home win as well. What's not to love? What's not to love? That's where I'm at.
Really, what's not to love? But today is our preview, or at least this episode, it's the same day, is our preview of both basketball programs. We'll start with the women's basketball program and then ease our way into the men's basketball program a little later with our good friend and fellow from the Rumble Seat writer, Asa. So we'll have that coming up later on. But let's start with women's basketball. And I think we can't start talking about this program without starting on a little bit of a dour note and talking about the passing of Tasha Butts, who was Tech's defensive coordinator and one of its assistant head coaches before leaving to go be the head coach at Georgetown this past year. This news came out, I think, last week or the week before.
Yeah, late October. Yeah.
If you didn't know the story, she'd been struggling with a battle with cancer the last couple of years. Tech was very supportive of her case. They did a lot of, especially when the Play for K games came up, she did. She thanked the crowd for their support, and she thanked the team for their support the last couple of years. And it's obviously not. It's just, there's no real way to transition away from it. So I wanted to make sure that I got this said this up front and made sure that we mentioned her on the podcast. Jack, do you have anything to add here?
I mean, yeah, I'm friends with a couple of DX former women's basketball players at Tech who I had classes with, and they were as heartbroken as anybody. She was easily one of the really reliable figures on that coaching staff for people to just be loved on and to develop their games as well. And she was absolutely on a path to be one of the better head coaches, I think, in women's basketball. People loved her so much. Her time at Georgetown was so deserved. So it's without a doubt, women's basketball lost one of its best people in this. So she fought really hard. I mean, yeah, it was a 2-year battle of breast cancer. And so in fact, she was still doing her job at Tech at a high level while fighting that was more impressive than anything probably the three of us are ever going to do.
And got it so well that she got herself hired away to be at Georgetown.
Yeah, I mean, she was a superhuman of superhumans. So it really sucks to have to just know this is a thing that happened. So they're going to Tech is going to have they had an in memoriam for her moment of silence during their exhibition game last week, and there's going to be a couple more special nights dedicated to her, especially in February when they do have their breast cancer awareness games. So those are already on the calendar and out there in case you want to be in McCamish for that particular game.
Well then, I think we should move on. Let's talk a little bit about the roster and how that's evolved over the past couple of months. Mr. Purdy, give me some of the outgoings from the end of the 2023 season.
We got a mix of graduations and transfers. The graduates, which we knew about, were Nerea Hermosa, Cameron Swartz, and Bianca Jackson. Hermosa was at the end of her 4th year. She was not going to do a grad year with us. And Cam Swartz and Bianca Jackson both were 5th years using their extra year of eligibility and played their final seasons with us. Transfer-wise, after the season, we lost Raven Boswell and Carmen Harrison, who were quite honestly just not going to get playing time on this current team. And we mentioned this during the season last year, but Aaliyah Love we're pretty sure was dismissed from the team middle of last season, right at the front of ACC play, and she transferred to Louisville in December, so she wasn't eligible until this year. So expect to see her on Louisville's roster. So those are all of our outgoings. Not a ton. Only three graduations and a couple of transfers, and I assume we're about to go into this. I think a very solid freshman class, especially based on what I saw at the exhibition game on Thursday.
I mean, before we get to the incomings, it was just a very young roster that was
Yep.
cornerstoned by a couple of these transfers that Tech had hedged their bet or had bet heavily on, right? You expected Carmen Swartz to or Cam Swartz to really set herself apart with her 3-point shooting ability last year, and
He
Bianca
just
Jackson
never turned the corner with that.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
like
I mean,
and,
she
and
was extremely streaky.
He was
I
an
think that was
ACC
part of
Player
it.
of the Year. I mean, it could be Mike DeVoe was on the record about the interesting lighting at McCamish in the past. I don't remember the exact quote. It could be something like that. It could be that classes are hard. You never know with some of the stuff like that. And we already saw them playing without Love most of the ACC slate last year. So like even thinking about that as an exit is kind of, well, we already saw what that team looked like, you know, without her and without being able to plug it in. And in the case of Nerea Hermosa, great time on the flats, but I feel like she's one of those players that we always just waited for her to turn the corner, and it never quite got there. And where I transition into maybe a more positive, and nothing but nice things to say about Bianca Jackson, Carmen. I hope her and Raven get playing time elsewhere. But when you think about the folks that Tech's bringing in, granted it covers a bevy of positions, guard, forward, whatever. Between the 6 newcomers, you don't have to get a whole starting 5 out of that. And I think we'll kind of get into this as we talk about the team, like the things we know and the things we think we know about this team. But you know, in terms of Adriadna, Rusni, Deja, Sydney, Caitlin, and Jada, there don't need to be an ACC caliber starting lineup there. A lot of them are freshmen, you know, like there's time to figure it out, and you just got to hit on a couple. And I think we saw that last year, having to play kind of with the hand behind the back, losing Love in the middle of the year, and you know, just kind of having to I guess figure it out, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, it was this year and last year are the transition years for, you know, going from the old core of we've talked a lot about the Kubai, Sarah Bates, Lada Ladinen squad. Funny enough, Cam Swartz and Lada Ladinen now play for the same team in Spain. And so it was going to be this was going to be the rough patch as we get the new folks in, basically. And yeah, Swartz and Jackson were kind of like the old folks to patch it up. Sydney Johnson and Caitlin Wilson are also the exact same. They're kind of filling that exact same role. 5th-year transfers who have got a good shooting pedigree, who are just helping kind of just be the elders in the clubhouse. Most of the 4 people that started, there were 3 of our starters against Georgia College on Thursday in our exhibition game were sophomores. So it's absolutely heavy on that still.
Yeah, just to add to some of that news about outgoings, Raven Boswell transferred to Pitt. That was announced in August. And Cameron Harrison transferred to Belmont. So not too shabby in terms of, I mean, one of them is still in the Power 5 conference, and then the other one is at a very strong women's basketball team. And
Belmont's one of the best mid-majors out there. Like, that's not a shabby.
It's scary when we have to play them. It's scary. I
think
we did a home and home against them like
we
2
did,
years ago. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, we went to one of those games and were spooked.
That was spooky.
How good, how good Belmont looked, and how much Tech struggled in that game. And it was jarring, right? And Belmont is a very good team, but I think we're getting we don't need to get too in the weeds on that end. I think holistically, when we talk about the outgoings on this team, we have to, I mean, it comes down to roster construction, right? And this is something that you said, Jack. It's Tech brought in Cam Swartz and Bianca Jackson to be senior leaders on that team, along with Nerea Hermosa. But they surrounded them with a lot of freshmen and sophomore talent. And now they're doing that. But it was always going to be a transitional year, right? I think this is something that we saw.
I think they accomplished that mission, though. Because, like, if you look at how some of the now sophomores grew, and again, in things we think we know, Toni Morgan is good, like, candidate for first team all ACC preseason. Like,
she good. Yeah.
This is me saying, I don't know much about every other team, but I know that Toni Morgan is up there with the best of them. And that's in large part thanks to having a good core, like Jack said about transitioning away from the old core. Nerea Hermosa, arguably the last player that truly was a member of that old core, the Sweet 16 team. That plus Cam Schwartz, who'd played a couple places, had to overcome some adversity. Bianca Jackson, who was a good plug and play, solid play. Like those are the people you want to learn from. And I think the year didn't go how we kind of expected it to. It seemed to be more like a reload type situation. Them's the beans. I don't think you can let them off the hook for it, but you can't say it was a lost year per se either, especially losing Aaliyah Love before the ACC slate even starts, who was one of your top scorers the year before that. So
yeah, and one of the things there too is it felt, my recollection of last year was basically it felt like the year before, the season before that men's basketball had, is where they were stuck in neutral between this old guard of players and the new crop of players. And it just, there was a constant tension between, oh, should we just play the kids and give them time to grow? Or should we try to keep winning during this period? And they didn't really figure out where they wanted to sit on that fence until the last stages of the season, basically.
Well, and Pastner was on the record here saying that he said, you know, Jose Moses, if you want to come back, you can come back, and kind of got left in the lurch transfer wise. And I think there's a parallel to, again, losing Aaliyah Love, major contributor years prior to then, you know, hey, what are you going to fill that gap with? Well, at that case, it's the middle of the year. You can't really do much. And I get that this feels like me harping on, last year or 2 years ago, but that defines so much of what we know about this year's team, you know?
I'll push back a little bit. Aaliyah Love was not contributing to this team last year. She was
not. She was not at all.
But she was expected to.
She
That's
was.
my
No,
point.
you're right. She was. And then I don't know why she downgraded significantly, but she did. So that's just that. I'll note. So we have at the end of this section, I talked with the associate head coach and offensive coordinator Blanche Alverson, where we did a lot of talking about the new people, and so I'm gonna let her cover that as part of this preview. And we mentioned a little bit that they wanted, like, their identity is defense. Always has been defense. That's what got them to the tournament for 2 years. That's how we beat UConn 3 years ago or 2 years ago, whenever that was. And they wanted to do a fast offense kind of thing last year because Tony's extremely good downhill. They knew Cam could shoot. They knew Bianca could shoot. And they knew Kara also can shoot as well, but she can work inside at times as well. And they kind of just didn't get there. And that's where I think was most potent in terms of like that, trying to find the identity, being stuck between two things of like a lot of defense, but also trying to be a transition team and a really good offensive team. This year, I think is be a little bit better with that because Sydney Johnson came from Boston University. She was one of their best players ever on their team. So not Boston, because we have a Boston College transfer last year, Boston University this year. And so she's going to fill in a lot of that gap. But it's going to be Tony. Like, it's going to be Tony leading this offense, being the point guard. Sydney comes in behind her. Inez Noguero, she's we have on the shot sheet Busquets-esque, which I think is accurate, like extremely good court vision.
Okay, I have to explain. Yeah, we have to explain that one for the viewers that don't watch soccer.
Basically, she's very. I mean, the basketball parallel transition to soccer enough. Like, she knows where to be at the right time and who to pass the ball to. Like, she's got a very high basketball IQ. And her thing was last year, she was just a skinny little freshman who could just get bodied by everybody. And this year she definitely looks stronger. Like, the weight room has paid off for sure this year. She looked far, far stronger in the exhibition match, which I mean is critical. That's gonna be critical for her game. She was unplayable at times because like she was a defensive negative, and as soon as a tall person got in her way, she was effectively neutralized on offense.
And I mean, it's one of those things too where she's one of the players that missed out because the coaching staff stuck to Bianca Jackson and Cam Swartz for most of the minutes until the latter stage of the season, like we were saying before. Like, if she had a little bit more time to bake during the mid stage and maybe that early stage of ACC play, I think that's where you see, hey, maybe she figures something out against those taller players. She figures something else out and working with the rest of the players in the lineup, and is able to build relationships on the court, right? And figure her way around that size disadvantage. But before we get to those two players, I guess we've already covered them in a little bit of detail. But before we get to those two players, let's talk a little bit about the incomings for this team. And I think we've you talked a lot with Coach Alverson about some of these names, but I just want to make sure that we name them all. We talk a little bit about them. So, Mr. Purdy, what do you got for me?
All right, so we got Ariadna Turbis, or Ari's how she's going to go by. She's going to be the center. She played a lot of backup role for Aisha Arana at center in the exhibition game. She's going to get playing time this year. She is the second tall person, like tall man forward person that we've got. So you're going to see a lot of her this year. Rusne Augustinate, she's from Lithuania. She just goes by Rus at this point, or Ross. She's going to be a scorer, twitchy. Really, she had a fun energy last year. At the game, really fun. Deasia Thomas, she can kind of play guard and forward. She's 6'2", so one of our larger players this year, but really strong, really quick. She played volleyball in high school as a state champ, so might be our emergency middle blocker if we have another middle blocker injury on the Collier's team. So who knows there? We mentioned Sydney Johnson. Caitlin Wilson came from Cincinnati, shooter person. Jada Bediako is the last one. I kind of forgot a little bit about her. She didn't really play on Thursday, so I have not put an eye on her to see what her game is like. Of those names that I named, you're going to want to know Ari Termis's name, you're going to want to know Rus Augustinate's name, and you're going to want to know Deasia Thomas's name of the three freshmen. You'll see a lot of them this year. I think just in general, this freshman class is coming in at a higher level than last year's freshman class did. They also have more time together than they did last year. Blanche mentioned in our interview, not to spoil it, but they had a training trip in Croatia and Spain over the summer. And so they played a lot together before they even got to Atlanta and like really started practicing and stuff like that. So they've had more time to gel than the average Tech women's basketball team has.
I got an aside I need to get in because I did my homework. On my fellow, I guess I'm not actually pure Lithuanian anymore, but it's most of my heritage. On my fellow Lithuanian, Rusne Augustinate, do you know where she did her prep, her college prep? Asa, this is a good one for you too. I promise it's relevant.
I think I know where it is, but so I'm not gonna spill.
My other writing pal Maggie has put this in our preview doc, so I can read you the academy in Florida if you'd like.
Okay, read it out, and if it rings any bells for anyone, let me know.
Monteverde Academy, Florida. Does not ring any bells for me.
I see you nodding, Asa. I see you nodding. Who else went to Monteverde that our listeners might know?
Mike DeVoe, correct?
Yes, it is.
And like a ton of really good players.
It's a basketball academy for sure, but I'd be remiss not to mention the Mike DeVoe connection there.
Lovely point. Yeah, so those are gonna be some good names to see. I think of those new folks, I'm gonna guess we're gonna see Ari the most, just because we can't play Aisha Arana's 40 points a game or 40 minutes a game. So you got to have another center in there and take some of that. But she was great. Like, she was a really good communicator in that. She had some good, I think, just as good of a defensive awareness as Arana did. So, in general, and to go to the section of things we think we know section, the offense did better in terms of the getting down the court fast. There was a moment where Sydney Johnson was like kind of looking for a signal, and then they just told her, run as fast as you can. And then we had a bucket in 5 seconds. So I think this year will be another step forward in that, figuring out the quick transition offense to use Tony's strengths, who is incredibly good going downhill, and not lose a defensive identity at the same time. So I think I want to leave that part there, because there's still a gazillion minutes of basketball to be played to actually see if this is a real thing or not.
All of them.
All of the
Literally
minutes.
All of the minutes of basketball for the season have yet to be played.
All of that. So they're still super, super young. This is. I'll read you the starting five against Georgia College on Thursday. It was Tony Morgan, Aisha Arana, Kayla Blackshear, Kara Dunn, and Inez Noero. Kayla Blackshear is going to get basically 50% of our rebounds this year. She is a beast inside, absolute beast. If you didn't see her last year, but she
came along nicely last year too, though. That's
absolutely. Absolutely. She made a jump, and it was and that was big. So I mean, and Aisha's a fifth year, so this is her final year as well. But that's 3 sophomores and a fifth year and a senior that composes that starting lineup, if they go with that tomorrow against, or today when you're listening, against Coastal Carolina.
And I think that leaves me to my last point that I've got in terms of preview stuff. Can we grow from what we saw last year? Can the transfers be more consistent? Because I think we really expected transfers to be more plug and play last year than they were. And can they complement, kind of what the team thinks that they can do and what they've done in the past. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, to borrow Passnerism, getting old and staying old, right? And it seems like we kind of had a lot of factors line up in the fact that last year's team wasn't old. And what can another year under the belt do to kind of build them back up?
Exactly. A good year this year for them, I think, is like at least 6 or 7 ACC wins. Last year they were kind of at the bottom, and they knew they were going to be at the bottom, though. Like, there was like an 8-loss stretch in there, man. Like, it got really bad.
I think the ceiling needs to be higher than 7 if we're prognosticating. Like,
it's still
this team needs to do some more growing than
it's a
that.
Super young. Well, okay, that's right. I'm still thinking in football terms, maybe a little bit in my head. Okay, let's go with 9. The ACC is still like is super good at basketball and in women's basketball. So like, we're gonna run into buzzsaws every week because that's just how they're gonna be. So they're gonna have some upset wins. They beat NC State last year at home when they were ranked, so that was fun. But then they also allowed 99 to Florida State. So like, they can go both ways. Hopefully we don't have as big of a stinker there and don't have a 7-game losing streak again. But yeah, I'm excited for this team. It's going to be a growing year for sure. And I think let's just go to the interview with Blanche now, and you'll be able to hear what they think. To help us get ready for the 2023-2024 Tech women's basketball season, now a repeat guest on the podcast, associate head coach and offensive coordinator, Coach Blanche Alverson. Blanche, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was at the game last night against Georgia College. It was fun to see y'all play. Good to see the new faces and the now returning faces as well. I just want to ask immediately, were there any big takeaways from that game that y'all saw? Like, okay, maybe this is a new problem we didn't really see for coming, or there was a strength that you saw that was good to see actually becoming a strength?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're all very pleased with is our offensive execution and our offensive game plan. Scoring 93 points for us is something we haven't really done in the past. So being able to do that and just see those numbers start to come, and we didn't shoot the 3 ball that great and still were able to produce on the offensive end of the floor. I think that was exciting to see, and something that we've been kind of wanting and working on for a couple years now, is really working on our pace and improving our pace of play. And, looking back at the game, we scored over 20 points in transition. So that was something that was really important for us.
Yeah, that was a big thing I noticed, because I remember last year when we talked, you had mentioned like trying to get the offense faster. I think at points that I saw that last year, and there was some games where it seemed like you'd get to half court and it would slow down just a little bit of a tad, and the rhythm wasn't all the way there as it maybe could have been. But yeah, last night that was the first thing I noticed. Like, oh, Tony's getting the ball up a lot faster. She's finding Kara, she's finding Inez, and like really making good moves there. Exactly. So that was good to see. Defensively, I did notice the perimeter defense was maybe not the strongest part. They were raining some threes. Is that something y'all need to focus on down the line too?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely think that's the focus right now. We've always been a great defensive team, and I think that's something for us that, like, it's who we are. And I think, we did want to make some major shifts offensively, so we put a lot of time into that. And I think, we're not discouraged by that at all. I think the biggest thing is knowing what we need to work on and put the work in and put the time into that. And because we know, like, what we're going to be able to rely on is our defense. And so, it gives us good film to watch and work on.
The starting 5 was mostly all your sophomores, and then Aisha. Was that the prototypical starting 5, or was that just something a test to roll out? I assume Tony and Kara and a couple others are going to be always there in that starting 5 if they can be. But were y'all rolling out your rotations as if that was a normal game?
Yeah, I think so. I think for us, those are our experienced players returning, and all of them have started games in the past. And, it's been something at practice every day. Like, there are no true starters. Everybody's contributing, right? So that's one of the messages that we send from a production standpoint is it's going to take us all. The way we're going to be successful this year is by the sum of our parts. Coach Nell said that in our huddle before the game yesterday. Like, we will be the sum of our parts. It doesn't matter who's starting, it's about, like, what are we doing throughout the entirety of the game and how are we contributing? I do think experience does help. And we were very fortunate that last year, a lot of those sophomores got a lot of experience in play, right? So I think that definitely does carry over, and we're really excited about the future and where we're going in our freshman class. And, I think that we're going to continue to grow and gel, and our team identity is going to continue to mold
Yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to because last year there was a lot of rawness to that team and just the sheer number of inexperienced minutes happening and seeing them learn game by game by game through the really rough patch that happened with ACC play, a good front part of the season too. But like seeing them, they looked a lot more polished last night, I think is what I would pull from that game. Are y'all getting that same sense of just the reps are showing now at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, being able to start working on our team chemistry in the summer, because we went and played overseas in August, I think that was super helpful. Gave us a little bit of an insight of, okay, this is who we're going to be, start working on that chemistry piece. We do have a team who loves each other and cares about each other very much. And you can see that, I think, this year, the chemistry and them playing together and the flow of which they play, they communicate. Yeah. We still have a lot of work to do in that regard, but I think it's really encouraging to see the direction we're going. Nice,
for sure. I want to ask about the new folks because that's where my knowledge gap is, and I think a lot of our listeners' knowledge gap is going to be. I want to start with Deja Thomas. Two-sporter, might be Michelle Collier's backup emergency middle blocker because she does have a volleyball background when it comes to it. What's the vision for her this year?
Yeah, she's Deja has a super high ceiling, and she is a kid that has phenomenal energy. I think that's one of the things. Her personality jumps out off the room, out of the page, however you want to say it. She's super bubbly and she plays extremely hard. I think her youth is refreshing. Yeah. Every day she's a sponge. Every day she's getting better and better and better. And she's starting to see that. And she's a phenomenal rebounder. She's actually one of our leading rebounders in practice, as we've statted since September. And so I think she's continuing to just get better. She has a great length. You see that, she has a knack for the rebounds and contesting shots and being super active. I think that's something that's going to really pay dividends for us down the line.
That's good. That's good to hear, because I know once Aisha leaves, someone's going to rake in the rebounds with Kayla. So that's good to hear. Rusne, oh man, I know this last name's going to kill me. Augustinate. Is that close enough? Okay,
that was pretty close. Yeah. Nice, okay. I don't think I say it great either. But we try like Augustinate.
Augustinate. Okay. I'll look at my Lithuanian down the line.
We just call her Russ.
Russ. Okay, great. I can work with that. I liked how her shot just like it was a nice quick twitch shot last night from what I could see. She looked to be more of an offensive weapon and to keep up the pace. Is that kind of what you're envisioning there?
Yeah, she is a scorer through and through, and she has that mentality, and she's hunting shots, and I think for her that's one of her biggest strengths is that she can really shoot it. Her shot is so pure. She's a gym rat. She's in the gym constantly. She goes so hard. I think that's one thing that like you see the end product, but I think what's really most impressive about her is what she did to get that shot. How hard she come off of her cuts and what she's working on. And she's a sponge, like, and just taking it all in and getting better and trying to find her role, I think is really important for her right now, because she is such an offensive threat and being able to come in and bring that energy to the team. And like, I think that's something that we'll be really excited that we have somebody who's shot hunting and has that mentality. And, one thing I think is really special about her is she might miss 3 in a row, but she's going to take the 4th one with major confidence. And I think that's something that she's got to continue to build on, because she can really bring that to our team this year.
Yeah. That will be awesome. I think backup offense.
She's fun to. She's one of those like energy builders. Like it's a couple threes in transition, and it's a whole different ball game.
That's all. Yeah, no, you got to have those backup killers that are there to just keep things going. Speaking of sweet shots, Sydney Johnson's shot looked very buttery last night when she had a couple of those spot shots. Also nice to see another Georgian come home for their 5th year as well. What was the motivation to bring her home and her spot on this team?
One of the things I think that was so enticing about Sid is her experience. Being a 4-year starter, she was all conference at Boston U, being from Atlanta, bringing her back home. And we knew we had a team that was coming back with some experience, but we knew they were, our team for the most part is still pretty young. And so being able to bring in some experience, some veteranness, from Sid is really nice. And she's a great kid, and she brings such a good pace and playing with Tony. There's two different but both dynamic guards that just kind of give us different looks. And I think that's one of the things that we're really excited about her too, is because she can really score coming off ball screens, and she can really shoot the ball, but she can also lead the point and get us into action and keep a pace about us. So her experience is going to be something that we really value this year.
I noted the moment I remember the most was there was a possession where she was coming up. She looked over to you, and then I think you were telling her just to get down the court as fast as possible. And then it just went, and then there was a bucket within like 5 seconds. Like, yes, I know y'all been wanting this, and it happened so
just
quickly.
Go.
Yeah,
just go. And it was actually a 2-for-1 situation. So just go. Like, we've been really working on time and score situations, and so she's super coachable, and I think our chemistry as a whole with our staff and our players this year is really good. We are just one, right? Like, we're coaches and players, but we all have the same goal, and we're all one team when we're playing a game.
Really nice. Ariadna Teramis got a lot of playing time last night. I kind of figured she would, just because you got another big person here to help shore up the boards. I loved how vocal she was last night. I sat close for a few of those possessions, and she was the loudest one I heard by far.
It's awesome to hear as her coach.
All right, you're welcome. Yeah, I'll do that whenever you need. What I assume she's going to need to get a lot of minutes, because I know Aisha can't play all 40 minutes all the time. How have you liked? What have you liked from her so far?
Yeah, Ari was someone we recruited, identified really early in her recruiting process. We knew we would be losing Hermosa in that presence we've had for the last few years too. And Aisha obviously being older. But Ari was somebody who we started recruiting. She has, she's solid 6'6" and has played at a really high level. She's done double duty all her summers in Spain. She's played. Then when she was playing 17U, she also played 18U. When she played 18U, she also played 19U. So she's somebody who has a lot of national team experience and playing on her club team and at Segale, which is where all of our Spanish players have played actually. Is really something that for her, again, she's just like a sponge. I mean, I keep using that term for our freshmen, but really truly, like, as she continues to get stronger and more physical, her IQ and her passing ability. And then you saw her take a couple shots from the 3 last night.
That surprised me. I didn't know that was part of her game. I was like, oh, okay.
And she has the confidence to shoot it. And we need that. That's going to help expand our game. And you think about, with our size, like she can move really well and be kind of a rim protector, but also just an incredible offensive threat throughout. And I think that's something like I know a lot of people will continue to compare her and Nerea Hermosa, but they are very different. They are very different players. Yeah. And I think you'll start to see that as she continues to develop and grow, but we're really excited about what she can bring.
I'm looking forward to it. 3 straight Spanish centers. What a trend we're noticing here. Lastly, Jada Bediako and Caitlin Wilson, 2 newbies as well. I don't think they played last night. I may have missed some playing time they got.
Yeah, so Jada Bediako is a freshman post player from Canada, and she's somebody who, again, is just continuing to learn and grow. She talks too. That's one of the things we walked away from. She's very vocal, and she brings energy and defensive energy and intensity. We're really excited about the development. I think that's one of the things with our freshman class is the ceiling is really high for all of them. They all have great length, great size, and they also all have a ton of room to grow and improve. And so, that for them is every day is a learning process for them as a unit, but also individually for them to continue to grow and get better and better and better. I think we'll see a lot of them have made some really big strides by the time we get to January, once we start to get into games here soon. And the Caitlin Wilson transfer from Cincinnati, she can really shoot it. And I think being a grad transfer coming in, her experience within our team and talking to our team and the energy she brings, she's a light, she's smiling, she's talking. I think that's something for her. Like, she can really shoot it. She's got deep range. So her continue to work her way in and find some spots is going to be really good for her, because she can really shoot it. Yeah. Awesome. A lot of defense, a lot of offense of these two folks, which I assume it's kind of the goal. It seems like the normal goal. Get a little bit of everything. But it's interesting. We have 6, it feels like we have, I think 6 new players this year with our 2 transfers and 4 freshmen. But at the end of the day, like, because we had that opportunity to go to Europe in August, it doesn't feel so new. Right. Yeah. We've had a lot of time to play. We've played 3 games over there. We spent a lot of time together there. And so for us, it's just constantly, our focus is getting better every single day and continuing to grow and grow as a team. Has there been like a mantra or like a dedicated mission that is just like the thing you're pointing at now that y'all are saying it to each other? Well, okay. We have kind of a, with Georgia Tech now, we say sting them. Yeah. And so that is becoming something within our team. I'll give credit to Deasia Thomas on this, but we have a hand gesture now. We sting. So we're trying to sting, be disruptive. So we all the time are like sting them, and have a little hand.
That's cool.
So it's fun because I think it's fun. We all enjoy it, but it really, at the end of the day, like we really want to come and be disruptive as a team. And so obviously that comes with working on our defensive end and but being disruptive offensively, pushing tempo, pushing pace. And they're starting to, I think for us, that's how they want to play. And so we really just got to keep working and keep improving that way. But that's kind of a fun thing that you'll see us all do every once in a while. We're going to try to get the crowd in it a little bit too.
All right.
And then after our game, I think our social media posts had stung them. So
yes, I did see that.
We're going to really buy into is that stinging of a yellow jacket.
Love it. Looking forward just to Monday. You are going to play in front of 3,500-ish kids at 11 a.m. on a Monday, which I was wondering why. Like, we were kind of wondering, like, why is it at 11? Like, there might be a bunch of field trips. Sure enough, press release drops the next day. I'm like, oh, well, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I assume that's got to be exciting for them to have just a weird way to start the season, but like a kind of a cool way as well.
Yeah, the energy in those games is always fantastic. You have a bunch of kids being able to be there and screaming and shaking pom-poms and being excited. And I think it's really cool because it'll be loud. I know it'll be loud. Our gym gets really loud.
Yes.
So I know it's going to be extremely loud. And so it'll create a really good kind of buzz for our first game and first environment, like first true like team environment where we're playing our first official game. I think it'll feel fun. It'll feel different. Yeah. We're excited about it. We'll have to be really talking, really communicating because
that's great training to work on that too. Like just get every high pitched child in Atlanta and use them to your advantage.
Yeah.
Before we go, I guess scanning the schedule, a non-conference got some fun names there between Florida, Nebraska, and then a trip to Cancun, which that'll be fun. Before ACC play starts up. Are there any like super short-term goals y'all are pointing at to try and knock out in the first month or two?
Yeah, I would say for us, we just have to focus on one game at a time and get better every single game. This is a great opportunity for us. We do have a tough schedule. We've got some tough road games, got a good tournament, got some tough home games. And so I think it's really going to test us. And I think we're really going to have to just focus on one game at a time and just keep improving. And how can we improve from game to game to game and be able to adjust? It's going to be a tough challenge, but I think it'll also help us prepare for our conference, because our conference schedule is going to be equally as tough, if probably tougher, right?
It's stacked. Yeah. There's a
lot
of ranked teams.
Excited. Yeah, it'll be good, but it'll be a fun non-conference, but it'll also be a challenge.
For sure. All right, Blanche, thanks a ton for coming on. It was a joy talking with you. I'll be there on Monday and theoretically every other game. So can't wait to watch y'all play this year.
Thank you so much. Sting 'em.
Welcome back to Signs of the Southland. We'll be back to talk about the men's basketball program after this short break.
I'm going to be real honest with everyone out there. I just did an ad read for Section 103 like an hour and a half ago. So they haven't released anything new since then, though they do release a lot of new stuff. So the odds were kind of good that they might have. One thing I do want to plug is today I am wearing my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, the helmet shirt with the various national champions listed on it. It's like a nice heathery gray color, but they've also got it in a crew neck. So if you're looking as the weather turns to go into something with long sleeves and a little heat, I recommend pulling their crew neck option there as well. And that way, as I've done before when wearing this shirt, I can remind some of those people that you might encounter during your day, oh yeah, Georgia Tech does have 4 national championships, and you can wear those proudly. Legitimately have gotten surprised people asking me about that before. So great way to start up some discourse at various places that you might be out and about enjoying a nice Saturday. All that said, free shipping on orders over $70. You can find them at section103.com or at section 103 on Twitter. Akshay, back to you.
Welcome back to Signs of the Southland. Let's talk about the men's basketball program, which, if we said the women's program was in a state of transition, oh boy, is the men's program in one hell of a state of transition. We have basketball writer Asa Waters here joining us to talk about the men's program. Asa, how are you doing? How do you feel at a very high level about the state of this program heading into 2023-24?
Yeah, I think I'm just like an optimist at heart. So I'm riding high. Sometimes change is just what you need. So that's how we're feeling. I'm feeling hopeful, and like it couldn't get much worse than the last 2 years. So it can only go up from here.
I gotta say, I was typing out all these incoming players. Was a little sad typing out some of the outgoing ones, but there's 11 on here between freshmen and transfers. I was like, this can't be real. That's like almost a full roster, right? Like, do we have any sense on? I mean, obviously we've seen some of these transfers elsewhere, but like, what's your read on that? Net good, net like we'll see.
That's just kind of how it is now, I think, especially with the coaching change. Like that gives guys an excuse or an opportunity to go elsewhere. And I think Coach Stoudamire kind of, I don't want to say like processed guys, but I think there was some trimming of the fat and bringing in his guys to run his system. But functionally, we're returning like over 50% of our production, which is crazy because it's just 4 guys, but it's 4 guys that played a lot. So I think the transfers are more kind of complementary players, whereas at least for 2 of the guys coming back are kind of the key guys.
And so those guys being that we're on the same page here. That's Debo, Coleman, and Miles Kelly, correct?
Yeah. Debo and Miles, as well as Kyle Sturdivant and Lance Terry, who's a really good defender and good 2-way player, honestly.
Kyle Sturdivant has been at Tech for so long. I think this might, I don't have this on record, but I think this might be his 6th year.
He didn't even start his career though.
His 5th year.
He played 2 years at USC. Like this guy has been around for a minute. He played at USC, I think 2018 and 2019. Like definitely got the experience.
Yeah, he was 19 and 20 a freshman at USC, and then
20. Okay.
Yeah. So
time is so fake, dude. Time like pre and post, like pre-COVID feels like a decade ago. Honestly, I think a good place to start with this team is at the top. Before we talk about the incomings and outgoings in detail, let's start at the top with the change in head coach. Josh Pastner out after last year. 2 years removed from an ACC title and Tech's first NCAA tournament appearance in 12 years, 10 years. It was a long time. It was about a decade. Time, but at the end of the day, I think it comes back to something that we were talking about in the women's basketball portion of this episode, is that they were caught in this transitionary moment and stuck in neutral, and they just couldn't really find a way out of it. So in comes Damon Stoudamire from the Boston Celtics. He was one of the assistants there. He is flanked by Carl Hobbs, who was at Rutgers and George Washington. Stoudamire previously in college, coached at the University of the Pacific. So he has some experience in the college game in terms of recruiting, in terms of doing some of the more, intense parts of the job there. He's not just a pro guy. Asa, as a resident basketball expert, what else can you tell us about Stoudamire and Hobbs's? Stoudamire and Hobbs sounds like a Fast and Furious movie. Stoudamire's offensive identity and then his defensive identity as well.
Yeah. This is the hire that everybody was expecting, right? Everybody was in the message board saying, let's get Damon Stoudamire. No, not that it's a bad thing.
I don't know about y'all. Yeah. I was posting on the message boards asking for it.
No, yeah. I actually just posted a preview article, kind of talked about this, where he is saying a lot of things in the kind of his media availability so far that hint towards what you see from the Celtics. Like that very kind of up-tempo analytics ball, take a lot of threes, get to the rim, nothing in between. But you look at his time at Pacific, and it was like the opposite. It was like Virginia numbers. Like they were scoring in like the mid-60s every year, playing good defense. So who knows? Like, I truly don't know what to expect. Early returns from the Clark exhibition game say more of that Boston Celtics, we're going to take like 35 threes a game, which I'm fine with. I don't really want to see Virginia ball. It's not the most exciting, but if it wins, it wins. So that's a long way to say, who knows? There are 2 competing forces at play right there.
Yeah, this team could be really, even the last 2 or 3 years, they didn't really have like a very well-defined identity, I would say. Like they just kind of,
honestly, if you asked me, I'd say they were very much dependent on individual contributors making plays at a lot of the time. I think the challenge, at least for me, as someone that is a more casual men's basketball watcher, is how do they play as a unit, and do they have that offensive identity? Do they actually stick to that dogma of, we're going to be shooting threes, the mid-range shot is for suckers, we're only going to be dunking the ball and shooting threes? And honestly, if they do that, like, I think it's something that we talk about with football a lot, right? Is having that very distinct, you know what you are getting every single night, is actually a very good thing. Like that it's something that defined the football program for so long, and they went away from that. But I think if Tech establishes themselves as that analytically driven or analytically optimal, or NBA analytics at least, 3-point shooting team, I think they set themselves up very well from a, I guess, like a branding perspective, right? A program branding perspective. And that's something that they have to establish under a new head coach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's like the ideal scenario, and that's what I'm hopeful for. I think, under Pastner, the identity was more on defense, and I think we'll take a step back there, although Stoudamire's teams at Pacific were quite good on defense. But I just think he asks a lot of his front court players with the kind of really aggressive man-to-man defense they run. They don't really switch. They kind of try to hedge those screens. And if you watch those centers, they are having to do a lot of movement, and I don't think we have guys that are going to do that very well.
So, and I think that's kind of one of the things that Clark Atlanta, kind of hard to follow, radio, TV. So won't call myself the most informed guy yet, but just kind of translating to, the former regime's very particular form of defense, if you will, in years where it was run pretty well by your experienced Jose Alvarado, Moses Wright, that translated to an ACC title, and any caveat applies there. But in years it didn't. I feel like Tech was a pretty high fouling team, and that seemed to play out against Clark Atlanta. Again, not on TV, not on the radio. How much of that is quote unquote legit? You be the judge. But in terms of that, like, kind of, I don't even want to call it like boom or bust defense. It seems like it's gonna be on Tech to tighten that up, regardless of what that defensive identity is, right? Like, that's not much of a question, but like, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, no, fouls definitely were a problem for the last couple of years, and going both ways. We fouled too much and we didn't draw enough fouls.
Yep.
If it's one game, you can, decry the refs and say this is, home brewing, but when it's 2 seasons worth of data, something's wrong there.
Yeah.
So who knows what was happening in the Clark game? Some people did go to the game. I was not one of those. But I think we're hopeful that the new defense would kind of mitigate some of that, because I know under the amoeba zone that Pastner ran, there was a lot of he kind of wanted guys to take chances, go for steals, go for blocks, and that's gonna inevitably, those are gonna be reach and fouls. Those are gonna be shooting fouls. So this is gonna be more of a like simplified. I think that's been the biggest thing that Stoudamire talks about, but like that's the most coach speak thing. So who knows what that means, right? When they're like, we gotta simplify stuff. We've got to go back to the basics. So it seems like, I don't know. I'm pessimistic in that regard, because I feel like Stoudamire's kind of just been throwing like coach speak and platitudes out there. So we truly don't really know what's going to happen. But this team is kind of constructed and built to run that NBA style of offense. There's a lot of good shooters here, a lot of good athletes, and there are big men that you don't want touching the ball much besides on the post.
I mean, I remember when we talked with Drew Gordon earlier this year, like that initial list of like guys that came in between Amari Abram and Tyshawn Cloud and Tafari Gabari, it was like, wait a second, this is not who we were usually getting. Like, this was a different level of like hype on the front end that was very new. And then I remember looking at the shot chart from the Clark game, and it looked like James Harden. Like, it was only James Harden. Like, everywhere
it looked exactly like those like you said, it was the D'Antoni Rockets team.
Oh yeah,
it only took threes and only dunked the ball.
Yeah, it was the 2015 Rockets.
27 in a Western Conference Finals game.
It was absolutely it was absolutely the 2015-16 Rockets. Like, that was everything and under the sun that D'Antoni was trying to do there. And Daniel Morey ball kind of hasn't gone away yet. I was just, I'm just stunned. I was just stunned by this. And yeah, I mean, similar to the women's team, which I'm closer with than the guys' team, but it does feel a lot like it. This year's team feels a lot like what the women's team last year was, where it's like, all right, here's this clearly the face of the future. This faces of the future. This team are here now. A little bit of the old guard still hanging around. Coach them up a little bit. Except this time we have a brand new coach at the helm and not just reloading the same.
I gotta
coach.
say, I think Miles Kelly and Debo Coleman bring back a wealth of experience and talent.
Oh, they do. They do for sure.
I'm not necessarily convinced that like it's like bye Miles, thank you for your service. Like that dude might be the most athletic guy on Tech's campus.
He better lead this team in scoring, or else something went really wrong.
Unless Amari Abrams, that's my
true. Yeah,
that's my hot take. I think this could be Amari Abrams' team, or maybe I'm just buying into the hype. I don't know. He sets up well for that James Harden role. Like, it's not just because he's a lefty. Like, the guy just kind of moves different with the ball. He has a unique way of finding that space. Kelly, we tried to use him as an on-ball scorer, and that's not really his game.
No.
He's a great spot up shooter, and he's nimble enough to get to the rim, but like, he kind of doesn't know how to break down a guy one-on-one.
Little Mike DeVoe.
No, exactly.
Second Mike DeVoe mention in like 15 minutes.
We did.
Shout out Mike DeVoe.
I think he got a mention on the previous episode.
Yeah, he did. That was a
third in 2 hours. This has to be a record since he left.
So good.
I think this is a good time now that while we're talking about Amari Abrams, to talk more about the incomings for this season. So Asa, why don't you walk us through these guys? I don't know if you have our list.
All 10 of them, all 11 of them. Yeah.
I want the detailed breakdown on Marcos San Miguel. Like, where does he like to go eat? You know, like all that stuff.
Unfortunately, time limitations, I couldn't get to San Miguel. But there's a lot of guys to be excited about. This feels like a big, like, you could like convince yourself that any number of these guys are going to be like world beaters, and it's kind of a boom or bust group, which could turn out really well or could go really poorly. In my opinion, the one sure thing is Tyjon Claude. Not that he's going to be like an all ACC guy. He's going to rebound the ball, and that's like all we need him to do. The guy gets rebounds. He can score a little bit inside. That's all we need him to do. Set some screens. So I think that was a huge pickup. Outside of that, you're really betting on potential. We got Kawasi Reeves from Florida. Really, honestly, kind of underwhelming at Florida. Had a reputation of being a really good shooter. If you watch the tape, he just like it's just mechanics. He rushes his shots. He ends up like kicking his legs out. He twists his body. It's just things that you would hope could be coached out, but he's taken like almost 200 threes in college at this point. So I don't know if that's getting fixed, but he's a great athlete. And then I think the guy that I keep getting excited about is Tafara Gapari from UMass. Don't look at his stats. Those won't get you excited. Just watch the highlights. That's all you got to do. Watch the highlights and tell yourself.
I'm going to watch him right now.
Not to look at the numbers feels like a bad time.
Don't look at the terrible numbers. He's Giannis. He just moves like Giannis.
You guys keep going. I'm going to live react to this highlight video that you clipped while you guys talk.
I think it's definitely something that Tech fans are going to have to get used to regardless. I think one of the kind of like the truisms of college sports is you got to learn a lot of names all the time. And this feels kind of like that on overdrive. But the thing I remember more than, transfers being announced and things like that post Stoudamire's hire is I feel like people were pretty excited about Karl Hobbs. At least in terms of obviously some really great pieces in the assistant coach world that just, good experience at a variety of different institutions. But Hobbs, who came from Rutgers, also had some pretty good consistency of success at George Washington. I don't even know if we call them a mid-major or a low major, but certainly not a Power 5 school. Does that translate as an associate head coach more in like that experience and that wisdom, or do you think that's more of like a strategy, long-term vision type thing?
Yeah, no, I think that's it was a great hire. I think it was what we needed to go alongside Stoudamire, who has experience as a college coach, but not nearly kind of what you would expect for a guy going into the ACC. So you're kind of hopeful that Stoudamire can bring some kind of X's and O's knowledge, some branding, whereas Hobbs is kind of the old guard, understands the game, and he's already got us at least one pretty high profile recruit in the Baye Ndongo, who I'm excited for. I don't know how much he'll play this year, but he's got a ton of potential. So yeah, the Hobbs hire was huge.
Jack, I've heard you say this a couple of times. I'm a very sad Chicago Bulls fan, and I'm not as clued in with the rest of the league. I want you to remind me what you were saying about Stoudamire's effect on the Celtics, and how that affected them kind of once they were gone.
Yeah, they had a young head coach last year, brand new head coach with that incredibly good team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown leading the front. And he was kind of like, he wasn't the head coach, but he's on the bench. He's an experienced dude. He got a lot of NBA time out in Portland. And losing him lost that clubhouse like a very mature, experienced voice. And if you look at what happens to the Celtics in the playoffs, those guys fell down deader than dead to the Heat. Like, they looked terrible. I'm not saying it was because of Damon, but that's a voice in the room you want when you need a guy to like reassure you when things are going tough, because he knew what the heck was going on.
Like an emotional leader of sorts.
Yeah. He's a glue. I think in a sense he was a glue guy there. And like national pods were like, yeah, this wasn't good for them as soon as we had hired them. Which, as a Hawks fan, I was so happy that the Celtics got burned and Georgia Tech got helped in the same move. Also, I just watched the Scapari tape, and yeah, that guy looks good.
You're not.
No,
you
now
didn't
go look at the
along
stats.
with it?
Oh, I see them.
stats?
They're terrible.
Okay. I think that, is there anyone else from the roster that you want to talk about, Asa? Anyone else that pops out to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just talked about Baye Ndongo, who's one of the freshmen that came in. We had 4 freshmen come in addition to a ton of transfers, so a ton of new faces. I think Ndongo should play a little bit, and then Ibrahima Sakho, who I'm also very excited about. I think obviously Jalen Moore left in the offseason. Sakho kind of fits that role perfectly. Jack of all trades, master of none, but you can put him in different places. He'll play good defense. He might score a little bit. He'll rebound. I think he could turn into a really good player. Also, Ebenezer Dwana. I hope he does not start. Something has gone wrong if he's starting. He's kind of the big man that we're used to. Rodney Howard-esque, can't catch the ball, not going to score much. He's tall. That's what he does. He's tall.
The mix between transfers and freshmen, there being 4 or so freshmen, that seems pretty encouraging to me. Who, top line number 11's a lot of guys. It's just a lot of guys, but it's good to have exciting freshmen that you don't need to be immediate contributors. I think is a decent spot to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think what I want to know, I mean, on the point where you've made about we have a lot of returning production here. Remember what happened at the NCAA tournament this past year? Those teams that made the Final Four, they were all the oldest teams that had been together the longest. Not saying that means we're going to go dancing or anything like that, but in college basketball, where there's a crap ton of turnover everywhere all the time, having that much consistency with your main guys is becoming more and more rare, which makes it more and more of a good thing to have for us. I mean, it's always been a good thing, but it just kind of, I think, makes it a little bit extra good when you got 4 guys that know how to play together and can do a lot of the same things and get better on that same thing, have a better platform.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say consistency and team cohesion is the strength of ours at this point, but it having those 4 guys makes it better than it could have been. At least we don't have 15 new players, and them all being important members of the team, including Miles Kelly, who I think everybody expects to be the guy. Not having to replace the guy is usually a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think it's more what I hitting at. Like, we're not having to change out our main leads are still there. Having Kyle still around is probably going to be really good just for clubhouse stuff, because he's going to be the most experienced guy there, who has been he's played in the tournament, he's played in the ACC tournament, played in the COVID stuff. He knows how this whole ship is run. And those guys behind the scenes are super invaluable.
Yeah. One thing I actually want to jump back to when we're talking about the coaching staff, and I don't know if maybe I'm recognizing this a little bit more as a casual and someone still scarred from the Jeff Collins experience, but a lot of the points that he's hit over the course of his tenure, I promise this is more of a question and not an indictment. I
You
promise.
said the bad man's name on this podcast.
Yeah, don't
I thought we
don't
were
put
past
that
It's not
evil.
indictment.
Don't put that evil on Stoudamire.
No, but one of the things that I want to, I saw a connection to, or I guess I heard a connection to, is he's banged the drum a lot for that pro style of offense, and he's also done a lot of work on the branding side. I think we talked about him like as that emotional leader. We talked about, and a lot of the media, I guess that a lot of the stuff that's coming out on socials is very him centric, which you never really saw under Pastner. I'm not super familiar with the one, social media marketing is not my area of expertise. Two, men like basketball, like the men's basketball, like college basketball, social media and how that operation works is also a foreign concept to me. I don't know if y'all are seeing the same things that I'm seeing as like signs of concern, but like, are we actually going to? I guess there's not really a question in this.
Oh, now there's not a question.
Eeyore, I got a spin zone. The glossy profile of Damon Stoudamire and Georgia Tech men's basketball that was in Atlanta Magazine seems substantial and different in a way that Jeff Collins, with all of his bluster, never was. And if you're putting it out in Atlanta Magazine, getting it in front of different eyes, not just like tweeting your shoes into the void, I think those are different and effective in different ways. And there's also a name recognition to Damon Stoudamire that Jeff Collins, for all of his many isms, was a guy from Conyers whose football coaching accolades are now kind of suspect. Damon Stoudamire is a name that, I mean, among NBA and casual sports fans is
They know
pretty
the guy.
high, like
Yeah,
pretty
we
high
know who
name
this dude
IQ
is.
there. Like
we know who
like
this dude is. Yeah.
It's Damon Stoudamire. Like you're gonna brand him differently than you're gonna brand Josh Pastner or Brent Key or I don't know. I was about to say Michelle Collier, but I think that's honestly probably more of a Damon Stoudamire connection.
At this point, yeah, she's kind of at that
Yeah.
level. So.
Exactly. All that saying, like if you can have activations or things that get you out into the world that are, I don't know, when's the last time Tech had a glossy feature about any aspect of the school in Atlanta Magazine? Like that's cultural relevance and cachet that I don't think you can just buy. So I think you have to lean into it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry. Mini rant over.
No, totally justified. And like good branding is never bad. The Collins stuff is bad because he was a terrible coach. And I think the key difference there is like, yeah, it's Damon Stoudamire. It's not Jeff Collins. Like Jeff Collins desperately wanted to appear cool and to be cool, but he wasn't, and he wasn't a good coach. Stoudamire has that. He has that name recognition. People know who he is. People want like to follow this program because of him. And also to touch on like the pro style thing, that's a key difference. You hear pro style in football, that's boring. That's like, we're going to be really balanced. We're not going to do anything interesting. Pro style in basketball is good. That means we're going to try to score. So I think there's key differences there.
Yes.
Which make it somewhat exciting.
Run the touchdown play.
It's like an actual style, right? When you say style for football, it's like a nebulous, like
it means nothing.
Well, NFL offenses now run a bunch of different stuff, but when you're talking about basketball, I think you said it more succinctly than I can. It's like you're trying to score points and you're doing it in a very, very specific way that's been laid out by analytics practitioners, Daryl Morey, etc. Right, at least for the results of the Clark.
No, and it's something that hasn't fully transitioned to the college game yet, so it's innovative in a way. Whereas, I mean, saying pro style offense in college football is just the most coach speak, like non-answer thing you can say, and is the opposite of having an identity on offense.
And I want to make a point on the coach speak type thing too, because I'll admit I feel like I haven't gotten a great read from the press availability, whether it's just conferences or on the ACC tip-off that I've gotten from Damon Stoudamire, but not in a way that it's like, oh, he doesn't know, like that kind of thing. I just don't know if he's like a presser kind of guy. And I think that that's something that like we have to adjust our notion to. And I think I've seen it with Brent Key too, because the last like 3-4 weeks for Brent, his press conferences have been bangers. This time last year, I don't know that I was saying the same thing. And we're coming from Josh Pastner, who was basically a walking, talking, like consummate salesman guy who's just like, I'm gonna make you love me so much.
Even after the
what I'm gonna
loss,
say.
even after
You know?
the losses, I liked being in the room with him during those press conferences. Like, I mean, he like my first press conference I had with him, he was like, "Congrats on graduating tech." Like, I mentioned it like casually off to the side, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you did." Like, that man was the best cheerleader tech has had at that stature in ages. Like, I want him back here in some form or fashion, not as our head basketball
he was
coach,
a very good guy.
but like,
I
yeah,
don't
no,
see any-
Nice.
anyway,
no
yeah,
one has
like,
ever disputed that Pastner is a good human being with a track record of doing like
People have.
People have very much disputed that very famously.
no one
Legitimately,
has
yeah.
no one legitimately has been able.
no one
to
has legitimately
Yes.
Allegations
proven in a
proven
court of law
false.
Yeah.
disputed the fact that Pastner is a good guy with a
I-
track record of
But the point I was going to say there
press
is that
conference.
I think it's one of the reasons we're going like so many new faces on the court, but also like you just don't know 100% about Damon Stoudamire and how the team is going to react, and that's something that like I've just had to be like, okay, we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. We kind of get a sense for what he wants on offense. We'll get a sense for the rest of it. Like I don't know. He brought in some good transfers, some intriguing freshmen, and the rest is okay. You got Miles, you got a bag of tricks, and like, let her rip, I guess.
Text me your questions when I'm in the media room.
We'll see. But I think let's take that idea of we'll just need to see, and we'll scope that down to a couple specific questions, shall we? Asa, for you, what do you want to see out of this team? Like what things do you want to find out other than maybe how they set up their identity offensively and defensively? I mean, I guess we've seen what it is offensively. Like what are some specific things that you want to find out from this team over the course of the year?
Yeah, I mean, the identity, which you said I couldn't say, but basically, I do want to see what that offense looks like and how well they can execute it. I think we've, as much as I actually do like the Princeton offense, we kind of suffered through having to watch that and watch the Pastner iteration of that and guys just kind of going through the motions. And I'm excited to see what it looks like when some of these guys who have been here for a while are given the freedom to actually play and go make plays as opposed to passing the ball to Rodney Howard at the high post and just watching him. So that's what I want to see. I want to see guards with the ball in their hands in a position to make plays. I'm honestly sad about the defensive transitions. I don't really like man-to-man defense. I feel like if you can run zone, run it. But I'm interested to see how that goes. And more than anything else, I just want to see this team win games. I think everybody does, but like, I think they have the chance to be better than last year. It also has the chance to be a complete dumpster fire. So you never know.
I think you said like having them free to just like run plays. I was really struggling for like sports movie where all of a sudden the players just get to vibe, and I feel like that's been done many times, many ways in many sports. And in the Hollywood ending, they go on. Oh
always
yeah,
works.
Ted Lasso. That's a good example. Good job, Akshay. Thank you for that chat. But like in all sports, there's like that Hollywood movie ending, and I think my fear is just like, oh my gosh, we just went 0 for 28 from 3. And have that ignominious distinction because
You live and you die by it. That's what they say. I mean, you can live with that though. Like, odds are, if you go for 28, one of these games you're going like 20 for 28. So
Right, yeah.
At least you have something to hang your hat on, something to say like, this is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna try to do it well. I just don't think we had that the past couple of years. The offense was just outside of like a few games at the end of last year where we were just chunking threes. Which sets us up well for this year.
Okay. I think that is about all of the notes that we have on men's basketball. I don't want to get into predictions. I think we get in trouble when we make predictions about extremely volatile potentially volatile teams, so I'm not even going that far.
I mean, for football, we
How's
said
that
6 and
golf
6 and it's
national
working out.
championship, Jack?
Hey.
Yeah,
It was not a bad pick.
it was the national championship. So
We got to a national championship appearance, y'all. Come on. Anyways,
oh my god, you jokesters! But I will. Thank you, Asa, for joining us today to talk about basketball. But I will ask you to make some predictions, you all, about the ACC football schedule for this next week. This is a terrible transition, and we're rolling with it because I am going to keep talking, and none of you can stop me. Thursday, Virginia faces Louisville at 7:30, I think on ESPN. Mr. Purdy, what do you have for me on this game?
well, we just beat the crap out of Virginia, so I expect Louisville, we'll do the same.
Louisville, very good team. I don't have the lines in front of me, so we're just kind of working our way through this one.
Yeah,
Number
they didn't
4
have any.
FSU visits Coral Gables, Mr. Grant. That's a nooner on Saturday.
There's going to be like 8 people there, and I think they might all be cheering for FSU. I think FSU's acquitted themselves nicely this year, including really laying it on in the second half yesterday against Pitt. Miami, they might make it interesting, but I think in the end, that's still the Noles.
Asa, I have for you Boston College versus Virginia Tech at noon on Saturday. Let me give it to you this way. What if this was a basketball game, a men's basketball game? What's the point spread here?
I wouldn't want to watch that basketball game. I keep up with football. I know what's going on here. I'm going to a Virginia Tech game in 2 weeks, so I want Virginia Tech to win. I want there to be some fan support there, so I'm going with the Hokies. I think this will be close.
That's going to be an exciting game. I feel like Virginia, also Lane Stadium, cool venue. I went to the Tech Road game last year. Those teams are both much better than September would let on.
Yeah,
I would say.
I mean, we were talking about Boston College and Virginia Tech being the worst teams in the ACC in September, and now both of them have like winning records. So
yeah, in the top half now.
Yeah.
ACC is truly dumb. Speaking of more ACC games, Wake Forest goes to Raleigh to play NC State on the CW at 2 p.m. Mr. Purdy.
This deserves to be on the CW.
Whoa.
I mean, I don't want to know how to watch this game.
You can't say that about a lot of things. You can say that about very crappy DC Comics.
We shouldn't have been on the CW. We were too good for the CW. They put us on the CW, man. No. Come on.
Jack, I want you to guess. This is live trivia. How many years in a row have NC State and Wake Forest played a football game against each other?
Oh, probably like 85,000 years or something. Like I'm going to guess like 60. Oh, 90?
Still higher.
105?
Still higher.
115.
This will be, I believe, it's either the 113th or 114th meeting. I saw a graphic on TV yesterday, and I don't know if they counted this game yet. So it's probably 114 based on how that was written. But 114 years in a row of this venerable rivalry. Come on.
Yes, I'm enthralled. Wake Forest.
At some point, we'll talk about the new ACC football schedule model, and I assume that this matchup goes away in that model, but we will save that discussion for another day. Mr. Grant, another baseball game for you. Yankee Stadium hosts Syracuse and Pitt, both of whom one of whom does not have a baseball program. So
someone has to win this game.
They do.
They have to win it at Yankee Stadium, most importantly.
You know, if I picked ACC teams for my Sickos pick of the week, this might be up there pretty far, but Syracuse seems banged up. If Garrett Schrader ain't back, I think it's Pitt by default, and that's a pretty gross place to be.
That's extremely disgusting, especially given the game that Pitt played this past weekend versus FSU. That is at 3:30. The final game on the ACC slate, UNC at Duke, another basketball concoction for you, Asa.
Yeah, this is perfect. My gut tells me UNC, but my heart tells me Duke.
Ooh,
I like it. I like it.
That's the
I like it.
It's at UNC. So it'd be cool.
They're like 5 minutes from each other. They could walk. Like, come on.
They should.
Sickos picks of the week, gentlemen. Mr. Grant, you have the first pick, and I notice this is particularly interesting.
Yeah, so I don't usually pick teams with winning records for my sickos pick. James Madison is undefeated and ranked higher than Notre Dame in the year of our Lord 2023, which rules. They should be allowed to go to a bowl game. I'll get off my pedestal. UConn, which has a much more long-standing FBS football program, is going to visit them on the road at 1-8. They might get destroyed. So I think this will be some very interesting, Sun Belt action down there in Harrisonburg.
I don't think UConn is part of the Sun Belt, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're independent. They're independent, right?
They're independent. I didn't
But
say they were
JMU
part of it. I said James Madison was part of it.
That's right.
But-
Yeah.
Technicalities. Isn't JMU actively considering legal
Yes.
action?
I
versus the
I
NCAA?
was hanging out with multiple James Madison fans this week at my parents' brewery this past weekend who came to Atlanta just for their game against Georgia State where they killed the Panthers. And yeah, like the whole like the Virginia State legislature gets involved is like not a nothing story. Like there's traction there.
I will say,
and the NCAA has backed down from state action in the past. And also the fact there's a new president didn't help this as well. Like the Mark Emmert like had some leeway with exceptions like this, and the new guy, we don't know. So
I will say that I was reading some posts from a JMU sports writer on Twitter or X or whatever the heck we're gonna call it now. And he was
You don't have to
convinced
call it
that
X.
it was a bunch of posturing from the Virginia state legislators. And it was just kind of we are going to give the appearance of doing something about this, and not really do anything because we can't do anything. So I guess keep that in mind. It's
We'll
an
see.
interesting thing to watch.
it would
watch
suck.
out.
It would suck if they didn't get to have at least a good bowl game. Like, would they be playing in the Peach Bowl or something like that if they were D1? If they were fully bowl eligible, there's a real chance.
Oh,
they would
yeah.
be. So like,
Entirely legitimate.
it would be like, I mean, there's been past teams who like had sanctioned years, like that Ohio State team that like didn't go to a bowl after they got Urban Meyered or whatever. I think it was that was
Selling autographs.
yeah. So like it's happened, but like this team does not deserve that. Like they're good. Put them in front of the national spotlight.
Legitimately good. Jack, your sicko pick of the week.
I went very standard sicko and just found two bad teams in a game that I won't be awake for, and that's San Diego State playing Colorado State. I think they're both 3-5 or something like that in the conference, the Mountain West or whatever they play in. So would be shocked if anyone on the East Coast that didn't go to these schools watches that game.
I want to
Colorado State, sneaky good though. Sneaky good.
They're
Really?
they're
Okay.
better than
Okay.
their record
They hang
indicates.
with some teams.
They do? Okay. That's good to know.
They're coached by Jay Norvell, I think. Colorado State has a lot of resources for a Mountain West program. And Jay Norvell basically went laterally between Nevada and Colorado State in order to take advantage of those resources. So I'd keep
I
that in
didn't get
mind.
to unbox this, so I'm going to say it now because we're talking about Colorado State, which is a doorway into Colorado. Damon Stoudamire gives me some Dion White
Yeah.
energy.
Oh,
At the moment.
okay.
I didn't want
okay.
to say it though. I didn't want to say it. You can't be like,
I
we
didn't
got
want
the
to say it
Dion.
either. I was like, this is a little.
Oh,
I don't
my
think he's as
God.
much of a household name. People are like, I maybe have heard that at some point, but it's not like, Deion Sanders.
He missed
Congratulations. You all have ruined this for me.
He missed the Damon was early enough to avoid the Instagram NBA basketball phase so that none of the kids know who he is, but everyone's dad knows who he is for sure.
Will
I
people
meant
be
more
calling
in
him
terms
Coach
of, like,
Mighty Mouse?
What's the origin of that? I actually don't know the origin of this.
Mighty Mouse?
Yeah.
He's just little. I think that's the
Yeah.
origin of it.
Oh,
He's
okay,
just the,
great,
he's just the
great.
short guy.
All right, great.
That's just we have to get more creative with our nicknames.
Asa,
As
do
a
you have
society,
Asa, do you have a
we-
sickos thing?
I'm following up on my
Is Iowa
sickos.
playing?
Yes, I believe they are.
There you go.
Great call.
Good call. I wanted to follow up on my pick from last week, which was Iowa Northwestern,
Oh,
which
yes.
ended 10-7 Iowa in a game which had, let's see, 355 total yards between the two teams and minus 43 total EPA. between the two teams.
An
Which
explosion of offense for 10 points at the end of that
The
game.
Cubs outscored both teams in multiple games. I know that off the top of my head. Like, it was ugly.
The game was in Wrigley. Yeah.
yeah, this game was at Wrigley. I think we made a joke about that last week, but yeah, this isn't it. And I mean, Iowa fired their offensive coordinator, so none of it matters. Eat at Arby's, but like this is deplorable. This is like looking at this box score and then looking at like the Washington USC box score from this week. They're not at all the same sport. Like
they keep winning.
How they are technically the same sport,
and they have to play each other in the next few years.
They might be in Indianapolis. Like, they could very well be in Indianapolis to go get murderized by Michigan or Ohio State. No, Iowa, I meant, but
God, Iowa's gonna get steamrolled by whoever.
Let me look at this while we're sitting here, just to give us oh my God, why did I do that?
Just let me know when I can start slandering the Charlottesville.
Yeah,
curse.
they are currently atop the Big 10 West at a 4-2 record. Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are all 3-3.
But what about their record in the Legends division or the Leaders division?
Well,
that's what I want to know.
I guess what you want to know. I don't know.
Jack, I think that you're too young for Leaders versus.
Oh, Legends. I know what that was. I thought that was stupid from the beginning.
It's hilariously stupid.
Yeah,
it continues to be hilarious.
I just forgot who was where.
No Leaders in the Legends division. Sorry, no, they're all in the other ones. But... Okay,
all right, Mr. Grant, trivia time.
Trivia time. This is more of just me cathartically saying that the Charlottesville curse is made up. It's not real. Yes, I'm a very superstitious Chicago Cubs fan, so maybe I'm not consistently held with these beliefs. All that to say, gents, there exists a record, Georgia Tech's in ACC play at the University of Virginia in football. Georgia Tech has won there, I believe 4 times off the top of my head, including 5 times, including yesterday. That's what it was. 1990, 2009, 2013, 2023, and then one time before 1990 in the early days of the 80s. All right. All that to say, do you know the other 2 teams in which Georgia Tech has a similar road win percentage in football in ACC games? So doesn't if a team was independent, Georgia Tech or the other, doesn't count.
So it's a terrible record on the road in the ACC era.
Terrible win percentage.
Terrible win percentage. That sounds key.
Yes.
Oh. That okay. So
in the ACC era, well, it wouldn't be Clemson.
No.
It would be Clemson.
All-time Georgia Tech in ACC play has won 28 or 29% of their games at Death Valley. Virginia is a 22% club. They're the next highest than the Virginia. So you were close with that one.
Wake Forest?
No. Georgia Tech at Wake Forest has won 72.7% games in football.
Opposite direction.
And all time across all sports, Georgia Tech has won 49.2% of their games at Wake Forest. That is the 3rd highest of any team in the conference, behind Virginia Tech and Boston College, which are the only 2 that Georgia Tech holds winning road records against across all sports.
Miami?
Nope. Georgia Tech has gone an even 33.3% of the time down there before this most recent season. So it's higher than that now.
What about Florida State?
Florida State is the one we're tied with. So yes, that is one of the 2. Georgia Tech all time is 2-7 at Tallahassee. There's one more, and this is where I'm being a tricky little bit.
Did Jeff Collins have one of those wins?
He did.
Unfortunately, he did.
Jeff Sims won the revenge game against Florida State.
That was the first game of 2020. It was like, oh man.
There was like
a new era.
There was the one day we thought we turned the corner.
It was like 13-10. It was a sickos game.
It was ugly. It was an ugly game.
It was rough.
The
last one remaining is where I said it's win percentage. This is a giant asterisk. I'm not going to say anymore. There's very few games in the
which means it's Syracuse. It's Syracuse or Louisville.
Right? Yeah. I'm gonna go with Louisville.
No,
Oh,
he would be more excited if it was Louisville.
that's true.
No. Well, see, that is an awesome segue into part B of this trivia, which I'm
There's
just
a
gonna tell
B.
you.
Oh my goodness.
No, you don't have to guess at it. So
Okay.
Georgia Tech all time is 0 for 1 at Syracuse and 1-0 at Louisville.
Oh.
That one game in Syracuse was 2020. The one game in
Oh,
Louisville was
right.
2018
Forgot about
when
that.
Tobias Oliver, who also got a mention on part 1 of this podcast tonight, ran roughshod on him up in Louisville on a Friday night. The interesting distinction about Louisville is Georgia Tech all time has won 26.1% of its contests at Louisville in ACC play. Baseball, men's tennis, and softball have a non 0-1 or 100% or 0% win percentage.
Right.
Interestingly, Georgia Tech has never lost a football game or women's tennis match at Louisville in ACC play. Yet they've also never won a men's basketball, women's basketball, or volleyball game at Louisville in ACC play. And if that's not a perfect dichotomy, I don't know what is.
Men's basketball should have won last year. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Really,
There's always
don't
this year.
fire that one.
That game, I remember Kelly Quinlan tweeting like, "This is a terrible." Like he was just so defeated that he had to be at that game, and was just live tweeting his feelings of like, "This is destructively bad basketball."
Who among us?
I will say women's basketball probably should have won their game up there last year too. It was very close until
Yeah,
the
they
end.
should have.
Also of note, Georgia Tech is 0 for all the time at Clemson in softball. That is the other one rounding that out. There's
Wait. They're not over in softball. They won there
at
last
Clemson.
year.
At
Clemson. At Clemson. I heard at Louisville. Never mind.
No. We don't need to unbox Jake's family trauma on this podcast about Louisville softball. But anyways, different.
I mean, of course. I mean, to be fair, Clemson's softball program has only existed for 5 seasons. 4 seasons? 4 seasons?
And Valerie Kegels played every single one of those games.
Please tell me she graduated. Please
I don't know. We'll deal with that in the spring. Like I said, there's about a dozen other programs in which Georgia Tech is 0. Oh, there is one more program we're 0 for on the road. We've never beaten Notre Dame at Purcell Pavilion since they joined the ACC as well. Thank you for bearing with me. I told you I wanted to do that trivia. There was a lot to it, so you're troopers.
Well, there was like a part A, B, and C. So it's like a tech exam question.
Really was, man. We have to stay on.
Disgusting.
We have to stay
How
on.
dare
theme.
you remind me of exams?
We got to stay on theme somehow. I don't know what to tell you.
Well.
All right, Mr. Gray. I think about wraps it up for us on basketball previews. Thank you, Asa, for joining us tonight.
you.
Where can the people find you on the internet?
Literally nowhere, but from the Rumble seat. That's it.
We got it.
All right, Mr. Grant, take this home.
Yeah, so you can't find him on the internet, but you can find him at fromtherumbleseat.com and at FTRS blog on Twitter is where you can find the site. On that site, you can find me at JakeGrant98, Jax at Jack Nicholas. You can email us from the rumbleseat at gmail.com. We love your feedback, and we really do. We do use that to shape our podcast programming. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. You can find us and this fine podcast wherever podcasts are sold and or otherwise distributed. In the meantime, thanks Asa, thanks Joey for joining for football. Good night, good luck. See you next week, Go Jack.